scene opens with two men in dark brown tunics and hose and dark long boots treading down the cramped and slick waterways of London. They have these brown caps on with red crosses on the front. Looks like some kind of uniform. Kind of creeping along. The man leading in front, these two, he's scrawny and has long red hair. He's holding a torch out to light the way that is otherwise pitch black. His companion is a giant in comparison. His short brunette hair, he's hunching himself quite a bit to fit in this tunnel, his large size, kind of inching along the rounded sides of the very narrow passage. He's kind of bringing up the rear. And this large, short-haired man begins to complain as the two of them are moving along. How many more nights do you think they'll keep us down here? The red man, this red-headed fellow in front, shakes his head, looking impassive. Don't know, don't care. But we aren't even doing anything. I haven't seen any rats in these tunnels for weeks now. Long as old Devereaux keeps paying me coin to keep walking around down here, I'll do it. Count yourself lucky we ain't doing real work out there. A large man shakes his head, looking annoyed as they hit a fork in the tunnel, where it widens up significantly, going left and right. The slim, red-headed man looks both ways and then leads left. I mean, it's dusk to dawn every night. Now, why's it gotta be now? What's the good of coin if I can't go out and spend it on some ale or some fine bonny lass at Pop Lollies? You're thinking too much about it. Sooner or later, this gig will end, and you'll be dreaming of coming back here doing nothing. The big man raises his hands and begins to protest again, but is silenced as the scrawny redhead raises a hand, silently, moving down the tunnel. Something up ahead. Who goes there? And the camera looks into the darkness further down as a man in a similar brown tunic and hose, his crossed hat, steps forward, stopping at the edge of the torchlight. You lost, mate. Ain't got a torch. Where's your partner? The newcomer is bald, devoid of facial hair. His sharp blue eyes dart quickly to the torch and back to the redhead. He is just behind me, around the way. I think you've gotten turned around, friend. We've already searched this area tonight. The two sanitarians exchange glances before the redhead turns back to this bald man and nods. Right, well, best return to him. Wouldn't want to be lost down here without a torch. And he slowly turns to lead his large friend in the opposite direction. The hairless, blue-eyed man speaking quietly as the light leaves and he's further covered in darkness. Thank you for your concern. As the last flicker of torchlight leaves him, we see his tranquil smile turn into a grimace of irritation, and he disappears with the darkness, and the scene fades. We transition. Elsewhere in London, Tito Vega, covered, at least in the front, by this dark red stain and carrying this bloodied parchment, moves quickly with Simple Simon in the direction of Pop Lollies, in the direction of Elysium. Tito, the two of you are not far from Elysium now, and while it is a dark night, I generally understand Tito is wearing dark clothes most of the time, having the front of your tunic covered in blood might be a tough a tough sell walking through pop lollies. And this at least occurs to you as the two of you draw closer. We focus in on Tito and Simon as they are about a block away, and I'll leave this scene to you.
Simon's face is set as they move through the shadows of the city. He doesn't even notice or care about the stain of blood on Tito's shirt, but
Tito considers that this stain would be difficult to hide. But he's in no mood to seek a fresh pair of clothes. Here we are then.
yes, here we are.
Could you perhaps walk in front of me? I do need to conceal the stain.
Stain?
Tito points to the blood stain.
Ah, yes. We'll try to find you something to conceal that, but for now, of course.
Good, let's go. I have much to report.
Alright, Simon will lead the way inside, trying to block Tito as much as possible with his body.
Alright. Two of you head inside, and I'll spare any rolls. I'll say that it's a simple enough maneuver for Simon to provide some cover, the two of you sticking fairly close together until you've made your way downstairs into Elysium. And we'll transition as the two of you make your way down the long set of stairs and pass through this cloth screen. As the two of you enter, you see that Elysium is fairly populated tonight. The ballroom and lounges are quite full. Bella Matea and Rebecca Godfrey seem to be speaking together privately in a booth away from the crowds. They seem to have a handful of ghoul retainers talking nearby. You also see Simon would at least recognize the Tremere woman Sibylla Moore. She's speaking with Isaac Lavelle there in another booth. Tito, you see that your sire here, your sire is actually here since you left the Priory hours ago. And she is speaking with Genevieve Silvers. The sheriff is present, occupied by Helen. And lastly, there is a relatively new face in the crowd. And with that, we'll turn to Michael McGavin. What do we see when we turn to Michael, and what is he doing tonight at Elysium?
Michael looks perfectly at home in this particular setting. He's not exceptionally well dressed, but he's definitely appropriately attired for something casual / formal like Elysium. I don't know that he's quite important enough to have a gaggle of people around him, but he's spinning a yarn to some of the younger neonates nearby.
Alright, so this is the scene you see, Tito and Simon, as you make your way in.
Simon sweeps his eyes over the room, but they fall immediately on Genevieve Silvers. That's Genevieve.
Yes?
Yes, he says, looking at Tito. She wishes to be the Ventru Primogen, does she not?
There is competition there. What are you getting at?
You really are dense sometimes, Tito. You should tell her what you know about Marco.
I've already spoken to her what I've suspected about Marco.
It's more than suspect now, I would say. He tried to bring you in on his plot.
Yes, and it's still just my word against his.
Your word and mine. Not that my word means much of spit right now.
It would be much better if we could find this missing nosferatu. But for now, I do need to report to the sheriff.
That is why we came after all.
Indeed.
Let's make haste.
And Tito will begin stepping towards Sheriff Timbers.
Alright. And as I said, as you approach, you see that she's, or rather, he is occupied by Helen. But Helen turns, seeing the two of you approach, and she kind of waits there, seeing that the two of you mean to speak with one of them. And the sheriff looks to you, Tito, and sizing you up a moment. Keeper. Good timing. You're due for a report.
And I have dire news, Sheriff.
He raises an eyebrow, looking at you.
I should note that Simon stays back. He knows the sheriff does not like him at all. Within earshot, but not to be a true presence.
It's Quentin. He fell to an ambush of vampire hunters, mortals.
The sheriff's eyes go wide. He turns to Helen, who seems to take a hint that whatever they were talking about is not important compared to this, and she leaves with a quick bow, eyeing you as she goes, Simon, with a faint and weak smile. The sheriff turns back to you, Tito, kind of looking at you and then looking back to the crowds as if he's looking to see if anyone else heard that. And he gestures lightly to follow him to one of the corners of Elysium, away from some of the rest of the Canaanites.
And Tito does.
Michael's going to keep half an eye on where the sheriff goes.
Alright, are you trying to shadow or listen in at all?
He's not going to change position, but he's definitely going to, keep an eye on that group.
Okay.
There's not a lot that he can imagine would shake up Jack. So if he's looking that shaken, he wants to at least be aware of how that progresses.
The sheriff takes he takes Tito. He doesn't seem to pay any acknowledgement to Simon. He doesn't exactly tell him off either. He takes the two of you over to a corner, not exactly a booth, just kind of a corner of Elysium on these walls. And he turns to you, kind of blocking the rest of Elysium so that you're in the corner, more or less. Why don't you go ahead and tell me again what you just said?
Yes, apparently some vampire hunters got wind of some of his activities. They set out an ambush, of which he did not survive. Simon was with him at the time. He has first-hand account of what happened.
He'll turn to gauge you now, Simon.
Simon slinks forward almost like a wounded puppy. keeping his eyes averted.
What he says is true, Sheriff.
The sheriff looks almost exasperated. He's kind of tensing his brow and bringing his hand up. If you could imagine Cainites could have migraines, this might be the case. And how did you survive? He says, turning to Simon.
At that, Simon will look him in the eyes.
By doing as I've always done, Sheriff. Being a coward.
Did they follow you here?
No.
How can you be sure? He says, kind of raising his volume enough that a few people around Elysium have taken notice, and you might have even heard those words. Michael.
Well, if Jack's raising his voice, Michael is now has his curiosity peaked, and he's going to. He's not going to be stealthy about it, but he's going to slowly amble his way over, making sure he's at least within Jack's field of vision, even if just at the corner of his eye. If he gets waved off, he'll stop.
All right.
Simon. Oh, sorry.
I'm just gonna clarify. So you want to be within his field of vision, but do you want to be close enough to hear the conversation?
Well, he's going to slowly make his way close, expecting that Jack will see him at some point. And if he gets waved off, he'll back off. If he happens to get within earshot before that happens, then so be it.
Let's see how much etiquette you have. All right, you can go ahead and do that. So you're kind of inching along, and I'm sorry, I kind of cut you off. The sheriff just said, "How can you be sure?" What did Simon say?
Because, Sheriff, as much of a fool as I am, and we both know it, one thing I am good at is evasion. I led them on a chase through the docks, and awaited them for at least 4 hours to be sure that I wasn't followed. And then, using the gifts of my clan, I slunk away.
Do you know how they found out? At this point, I would say, Michael, you can hear this conversation fairly well, at least well enough, and you think you've caught the sheriff's eye at least once, but he hasn't waved you off yet.
I have not yet been able to suss it out. There were a number of events. You know, of course, of Quin's sickness.
Yes.
We arranged for a sizable shipment of cattle for him to use in the experiments performed by the Tremere to cure him. But in procuring these animals, we made some enemies. In an effort to get back in the good graces of one of my rather important contacts, Quin agreed to speak to another merchant. It was on the meeting with this merchant that we discovered we had been deceived.
He sighs. This is the last thing the city needs right now. I had heard of hunters entering the city, but I didn't know that they were that close. Who else knows about this?
Besides Tito and myself, no one.
Chamberlain Robin.
Oh, yes, Simon says. He obviously forgot that. Or maybe forced it out of his mind.
And about on cue, this is about when you see that Robin Olivers is kind of piercing the crowd from the screen, entering Elysium himself. And he makes straight for the dais, this rise platform, and he makes a gesture towards these musicians to stop playing. And this is enough that most of the Cainites in Elysium have stopped to watch him, and the sheriff as well has turned to engage him. So the Chamberlain makes his way up and turns to the group, everyone that's gathered in Elysium tonight. I am afraid I must make evident important developments to you all tonight. It has come to my attention that the Brujah whip Quentin Chamberlain has been slain by inquisitors at an estate by the docks earlier this evening. And at this, a nervous rise and chatter erupts between the Cainites here and there, many looking worried. We turn back to Michael as he's still kind of listening in on this group over here. How is he reacting?
He's kind of gauging Jack more than anything else. The rest, the fops in the room can worry and fret, but if Jack's in good state, then he's not worried.
Make a perception empathy roll. Difficulty 7. And as you're doing that, Simon and Tito, how are you kind of reacting to Robin now making this public?
Tito visibly frowns.
Simon actually expected it, so he turns to watch as well. His eyes fall on Michael for the first time, and he furrows his brow ridges for a moment, wondering how the man snuck up on him like that. But he says nothing.
Michael, as you're gauging Jack, you can see expectation. You can see that he definitely expected that Robin would be announcing this if he was clued in. This seems pretty run-of-the-mill. But you also see a hint of fear, which is not something you've seen Jack express. There's something in his eye that looks uncertain. But
Michael's going to see if he can't diffuse the situation at all, since no one's really speaking up at the moment. He's going to shout at Robin. Was they the glowy kind?
Robin looks down to you, and he narrows his eyes. He waits for a few moments. It seems like he doesn't exactly know what to say. I don't think the two of you ever officially met, though you probably knew of each other vaguely.
He's not going to respond directly.
It doesn't look like he's going to immediately respond. He kind of glares at you for a few moments before turning back to the crowd, seeing that
it's a rather important distinction, don't you think? Normal hunters, you kill them, you cut their throat, and you bury the body. The glowy kind, you fuck off to Cardiff.
That is enough. Please, calm everyone. Calm yourselves. Nothing to immediately panic over. Whether or not they are true hunters or not, it is unclear whom or what drew their attention. And as he says this, everyone make a perception alertness, difficulty 8. And for Tito, it's going to be difficulty 7. Alright. Michael, you're pretty sure that a lot of Robin's focus was on this nosferatu standing by Jack as you're looking at him. That he's kind of like eyeing him a lot. Tito, you're not really noticing anything out of the ordinary this evening, but Simon, when you're listening, when you're watching the Chamberlain speak, when he says it's unclear whom or what drew the hunter's attention, he's looking and holding his gaze a little bit too long on Tito. But he continues to speak up after just a moment after that. We have no reason yet to believe these hunters know any haven locations, but it reinforces that above all we must not betray the silence of the blood at this time. Leave not your meals drained in the street. Be of mind how you use your gifts. The prince will of course see to our defense on this matter. And with that, he steps off the dais, and it appears he's intercepted by someone else that no one's really seen before tonight. An individual that's kind of escaped notice, but he bears a red stitch symbol on the back of this dark cloak, dressed very decadently in a black tunic and hose, noble's cap, short curly blonde hair, and a bejeweled sword sheathed at his waist. It's kind of surprising, actually, that no one noticed him until just now. There's a very serious expression on his face after he intercepts the Chamberlain, and they're now speaking very quietly. But most of Elysium has erupted into discussion. I turn the scene back to you.
I expect he means you, Jack.
The sheriff turns to you. Well, look who's returned.
Prodigal son and all that.
Fancy your timing. You certainly know how to make enemies quick. I was the Chamberlain, in case you didn't know, returning so soon.
Fucking.
He cracks a smirk, and then seems to remember that he was talking about something important with the two behind him, and he turns back, kind of gauging the whole group of you, all three, so that he can speak to each of you. You two, this is, Michael McGavin.
Michael looks over at Simon. Aye, you must be the pretty one.
Simon looks at you like he wants to eat your face, Michael.
Well, Tito does look, with his bestial appearance, worse for wear.
So who the hell are you then?
Michael McIvan. Late from the island. The Isle of Ire. Hear me and old shiver me timbers. Happen to share a clan?
Yes, he's Quin, unfortunately. We'll have to reminisce over your run-ins with lupines another night. Actually, I could use some reliable kin these nights, he says, casting a glance back to Tito and Simon.
Well then. Greetings, Michael. What do you bring to the table?
It depends on who you ask. I've heard old Gage gone missing.
The sheriff nods, joining in again. Aye.
Condolences, I hope he's alright.
Avery as well. I suppose you've heard by now that Willow's dead.
I've not. That's news to my ears.
She died in the attack on Elysium months ago. I'm one of the last of us still in the area, actually.
Auspicious timing then. I'm happy to be of service to the clan, of course.
Beyond us, a number of Cainites have been going missing. Could be related to this attack on Elysium from months ago, but between these creatures killing Prince Adam, and disease infecting Cainites, it's hard to tell where one crisis ends and another begins. Now there's hunters, apparently. He closes his eyes, looking vexed.
The difference being this time I'm not the cause.
There are many troubles in the city.
And with Quin's death, we are again short-handed. Is to say, I am short-handed. Think you might be sticking around long enough to give me a hand? Says, turning to you, Michael.
I can't see a reason not to. Seems there's room for upward mobility.
Well, this saves me the trouble of finding you. And he looks back to Tito. Besides these hunters, I need to know what else has been happening, how your investigation has progressed. I need to have something to say to Ambrose besides more bad news.
Afraid there's not much of good news. I've mentioned a name to you, Vatic. Unfortunately, no one seems to know who this ancient being is.
Do you know anything else about him besides the name? What he might want?
The reasons behind what he does are unknown to me. If I had to guess, he would have a grudge with the late Prince Adam.
Well, I'd say that grudge is well over and settled.
I would think so too, yet still if I had another guess, I would say he seeks to take over and claim this land as his domain. That is about the only other reason I could see.
The sheriff turns to Simon to see if he has anything to add to this.
I would hate to think that my man was involved at all in anything that's happened.
Is all Simon can say. It's not even on topic anymore. It's just what's on his mind.
Well, what can I tell Ambrose that you are now working on? What leads do you still have?
Well, I have in my possession one of the ghouls of this ancient vampire.
You have his ghoul.
Correct, and the leader of the Quins, former.
Well, Christ, why didn't you say that before? Bring him in. Surely he can be questioned.
He is... Surely I could bring him in. Unfortunately, I've already questioned him. Both supernatural and mundane. He has been thoroughly muddled in his mind. The events he would speak of would not be accurate. Many of them are complete illusions crafted by this ancient being.
Out of character, is Tito trying to throw the sheriff off, or does he genuinely believe that this ghoul is just confused?
Oh, he he does believe that because he tried to look into his mind and see if it was altered, that this man has been thoroughly dominated with altered memories.
Just to clarify, because that was my mistake as storyteller, not noticing a rule. You got as far as trying that and realizing the vitae flowing through him was giving him some kind of protection. It was too potent for you to pull anything from.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I forgot about that detail.
I mentioned it
in
a
this
while
case,
ago,
yeah, in this case, Tito will change his argument to be, this being is far too ancient to penetrate the ghoul's mind from him, and he suspects any other older vampire in the city.
The sheriff, you see a frown grow on his face. You see he's uncertain at what you say. That's not encouraging. If Cainite can be that potent. Perhaps your sire. There are Cainites older than you.
The blood that I've tasted in this ghoul, it is of the most potent sort, to say the least.
Damn it. He curses a bit under his breath. Another dead end. So we have this man's ghoul that we cannot do anything with. Please tell me you have something else to present me.
There is the matter of Quin's ghoul.
And Tito looks questioningly towards Simon.
At least I think he's made him a ghoul by now.
The sheriff as well has turned to appraise you.
A member of the cleanse, so I believe. Before his untimely death, he was trying to get as much information as possible from this man. He would still be at Quin's estate, I think.
It sounds as though you already have another man from the cleanse. You think this other one will have more information then?
I was loath to bring it up because honestly I do not.
We do know of the high officers in the cleanse, their names. But considering their leader knew so little, it is not likely that they would know much.
The sheriff seems to pace a bit as he's listening to this.
However, all hope is not lost. They would have to take their orders from someone else. Perhaps that could point a finger towards a puppet master.
I grow weary of his myriad of connections. I want a name, I want an answer, I want something I can say that has been done. You can see his fangs are baring, he's getting impatient. There must be something else.
Sheriff.
And he stops to turn to you.
There is one more, but to say it out loud would be very dangerous.
Do not waste my time, whelp. Speak.
I shouldn't, because I have no firm proof to this accusation, you understand.
Christ tits, Tito, just tell him.
Tito looks around to see who could be listening.
Michael takes the cue and he'll give a sharp whistle towards the door. And in flaps a rather large raven that starts doing circles around the ballroom, cawing loudly.
Alright, it's my word against his, but
Michael will also hold up a hand and check to see who's had their attention drawn away by the noisy raven.
Most people have. It's a very odd sight, because you would know that to get down here you have to go through a tavern and a brothel. So for a bird to pass through these doors, it's a true mystery how this thing got down here. So everyone's really looking at this. It's caused quite a stir, and people are like, oh, they're kind of pointing up. They're interested and confused. Some are a bit alarmed. It's actually caused quite a bit of a distraction.
And he'll lower his hand.
Tito will lean in close to Sheriff Timbers and whisper into his ear, Marco Vespucci claims that Vatic is his liege.
You actually have to almost kind of stand up and lean up a bit. Jack is so large and broad-shouldered, to actually reach his ear is somewhat difficult, but you manage to do so, and as you pull back, he looks back at you, and his fangs have retracted, and you see a look of astonishment. That is a grave accusation to make. What grounds do you stand on?
I can tell you that it came up in a private conversation, but the firmer proof that I have is he delivered the leader of the cleanse to me. I've collected his notes, translated the code behind them. They've pointed towards association with members of the cleanse.
You can see in Jack's face he's taking you more seriously than he has in a long time. He's giving you a very adult expression. You know, he's very much paying attention now. Bring me what you have. Bring me these notes. Bring me anything you can to substantiate this. If this is a lead that can be followed, I will need much to act on it.
About this
Very
time,
well.
sorry. About this time, Michael takes a step away from the wall and pats his shoulder, and the raven comes down to land. Pardon me, folks. The old girl gets hungry now. He offers up a handful of corn to the raven.
The raven seems to greedily eat it up. having gone quiet, but also having drawn all of listening's attention to this corner of the room.
Michael slowly makes his way away from the speakers, hopefully drawing eyes with him.
Shall I assume you'll be at the tower later this evening?
Yes. Yes, I will be returning to the tower. He seems to be looking down, lost in thought for a moment. And he looks out to the crowd as if to look and see who's around again before looking back to you. Yes, bring me what you have. And do not speak of this any more than already have heard.
One more. Marco seeks a member of the Nosferatu clan. Seeks to eliminate him before he can talk. This man, well, the thing is, I do not know where he is.
No one does.
Simon says.
What is his name?
He looks to Tito. Is Tito going to answer, or should he?
Tito will look towards Simon and give him a nod.
Harper.
I've heard no great things of Harper. And surely Tristan, your elder, would know more.
No, unfortunately, he does not.
You don't keep knowledge of your havens, or don't you live in a group down there or something?
A misconception. At least as far as London is concerned. We know that Harper lives in the Eastern Waterways, which are currently being scoured by the cleaning crews.
He hisses and his teeth come out again. The goddamn sanitarians again.
We have been trying to remove them. We have a name of their leader.
So this Harper, you said that Vodek might want him dead or silenced?
Correct. I know not what information he holds, but Marco is in a haste to find this one.
That's the most we've had to go on for some time. We have a name, we have a place. Need to get those sanitarians out. The Ventru have the most sway in these things. Surely one of them can pull those bastards out.
Indeed, one might be up for it. Miss Silvers.
Go
She
then.
has set. Oh, sorry.
Oh, he just says go then.
By now, Michael has engaged anyone willing to listen in a very flamboyant description of how one catches and tames a raven.
Yeah, sorry, what was someone going to say?
Simon's just going to say that she's already set them to the task, but it doesn't really matter after he tells them to go, so he's just going to do so.
And Tito will nod and prepare to leave.
Alright. Meanwhile, Michael, you have gathered a few individuals' attention. Bella Matea as well has come up to examine this large bird and seems to be very interested in your tails and this creature flying in. But out of the corner of your eye, you see that it looks like these other two have departed from the sheriff.
I hate to be tearing myself away from you lovelies. I've suddenly gone Australian. Hold on. Well, I hate to be tearing myself away from you lovelies. It seems of other business has called me away. He'll kiss Bella Matea's hand and pat the shoulders of anyone else nearby and extricate himself in due haste.
Bella Matea actually looks a little awkward or concerned at your hasty kiss, and retracts a bit. You get the impression that perhaps it did not have the intended effect, but you make your way.
It definitely did.
You make your way away from this group and in the direction of Tito and Simon.
Oh no, here comes that gangrel.
It's not all bad. That was a fine distraction he's pulled off.
I've more than a few tricks up my sleeve.
Tricks that will come in handy, I'm sure.
Well, time will tell. He offers up the last kernel of corn to the raven and then directs it up the stairs.
Tito will look in the direction of Genevieve Silvers.
Alright, the crow flies off in the direction of the exit, and you look towards your raven, flies off, and you see that Genevieve, let's see here, I'm keeping up on my own notes. She seems like she was distracted by this raven, but has returned to speaking with your sire, and they're kind of speaking away in a booth.
I'm sorry, you said my sire?
Yes, Juliet's there.
Is she, in a booth? Who's she with?
With Genevieve Silvers.
Okay. Tito will step forward to this booth, making his presence known.
They both pause in their discussion, which you could tell was in hushed tones. But, you see your sire turn to you, and Genevieve as well, and Genevieve smiles politely as your sire speaks up. My child, I expected you to return to the Priory by now, but I see that the news of late has been dire. I am sorry, I understand. He seemed a good ally. He spoke to me with you the other night. It is an unfortunate loss.
It is. Oh, Miss Quin.
Yes. I think Genevieve kind of joins in, trying to look empathetic and be part of this conversation. He was a formidable Bruja, indeed. I assume that the two of you would like to discuss, as child and sire often do. I shall leave you to it.
Hold, madam.
You can keep your pretty tail right there.
Tito stops a moment but continues. I have a request of you, and it has to deal with the sewer workers.
She turns her head, interested, and your sire as well as watching you.
After tonight, Marco will fully know that I am his enemy. But there is a nosferatu in the sewers that Marco is seeking to put to final death. It is of the most importance in this investigation to find this nosferatu and safely question him as to what he knows about his dealings with Marco.
Genevieve listens intently and then makes a very sharp turn of her head to gauge and exchange glances with your sire, who nods quietly before turning back to you. I see. Yes, I am glad to see I have the support of the Keepers. He says, smiling to both of you briefly. Whatever I can do, I shall endeavor to do it. What specifically may I assist you with in this matter?
If it would be possible to clear out of character, was Eastern Sewers ever mentioned to Tito?
I believe so.
Simon actually just said that to Sheriff Timbers.
Okay. So, just to clear the patrols of the Eastern Sewers, so that we may look for this Harper unimpeded.
I see. Yes. Unfortunately, the late Ruby Pierce was the most connected to that department of institutions of which we have some pull over. I believe she initiated that surge nights ago in response to the event which led to you and Mr. Talbot being on stage. She was quite bitter about the priors and their involvement in all of that. It was quite amusing to most of us at the time, but I see now that perhaps it has become more of a problem to let this go on.
This investigation must be carried out with haste. If Ruby had the pull over this sector, is there any assistance you could offer at all?
Yes, do not worry, Mr. Tito Vega. I have a number of mortals who would have similar pull. I am certain I can arrange, perhaps not as easily, but of the same effect. And I suppose with your support, and she turns back, looking to your sire again, before turning back to you. I suppose I might ignore any favor owed. I see now the importance of this being resolved. Let me see what I can do about these sanitation workers.
Wonderful. It is appreciated.
She smiles very forced and bows her head a bit. Your sire gives you an approving nod and a smile as well.
And Tito returns that with a smile.
What are Simon and Michael doing during this time?
Is this Michael's been in and out of town for a while? Is this his first interaction with Genevieve?
I would say officially it probably is. You knew that she once was the Chamberlain back when Adam was prince, and you were strolling in and out of town. You never really met her officially, but clearly she's lost some status since then.
Just trying to see if... Because out of character, it seems like her speech pattern's weird. Not nearly as self-assured as one would expect of a Ventru.
It is very awkward and segmented. You notice that it's very, it's unique to her how she speaks, but as far as like what you gauge about her personality based on that, make a... Yeah, make a perception empathy difficulty 8. And as you're making that roll, what is Simon doing during this exchange? And hearing, actually, for the first time, that the sanitation workers apparently was a ploy by Ruby from ages ago.
Oh, he's furious. I actually might have him make a self-control check at that.
I think that's fair. You're a bit removed from it from now, but it has certainly been the bane of existence for all of the Nosferatu for months now. Make a self-control roll, difficulty 6. Unless you think it might be higher.
6 is fine.
Okay. Yeah, you're definitely feeling the fangs come out at least a little bit while you're sitting there listening to this, as she kind of casually mentions this irritation that the Ventru placed on the Nosferatu like it was nothing, and then they forgot about it. But you're able to keep it together. Go ahead.
He just stares daggers at Genevieve. He doesn't even disguise it. And I'm sure she probably expects it.
Meanwhile, Michael, you can't really gather whether or not her speech pattern tells you about her confidence, or if it's just kind of an odd quirk of hers.
Tito's spoken with her before. Does Tito pick up? Can Tito make the same roll?
You can, and yeah, same roll. Since you've spoken to her quite a bit more, I'll give you a difficulty 7.
What was it again? Perception.
Empathy.
Empathy. Okay.
Yeah, you're not sure either. You do know this is kind of this odd segmented way she speaks is kind of how she's always spoken, but now that you think about it, you're not actually sure if it's because she's unconfident about what she's saying or not. You don't really know.
No smacking of lips, eh? Oh, okay. Anyway. Tito will at least mention that there is still a Malkavian afoot who frequently disguises as prominent figures, to keep on the lookout for anyone you speak with, for telltale signs such as smacking of lips or odd behavior.
Oh, I see what you're getting at here. She thinks it a curious thing to bring up. You can tell just based on her expression, but she nods But no, she does not, smack her lips when she's speaking. You don't get that this might be Fontaine in disguise or anything like that.
Good, good.
Well, then, if you will excuse me, I must remove myself to the Priory. And she says, just looking to Genevieve, kind of rising and stepping to your side, Tito. I shall see you there soon, I hope, she says, turning back to you.
Tito will look towards Michael. Michael, I have a question for you.
And I have an answer. Let's see if they match.
Your raven, can it deliver messages?
Yes, if it's large enough for it to the great.
Yes, I need to get a note to my ghoul to procure the notes that I've been able to get from Marco, as well as news of her instructions.
If I heard you correctly, don't you think that's something you might not want to entrust to mere ghoul? I'm happy to do it, don't misunderstand. It's just... there's foulness afoot.
You called a bird?
Simon can't hold back his surprise.
Haven't you?
No, because that's stupid.
Well, the Raven doesn't think so.
The Raven shits on carriages.
On command.
I've had plenty of dealings with their like. They're as dumb as posts.
She'd disagree.
Perhaps you're right. If anything befell Juliet, it would not bode well.
For the newts, either.
Tito does glance toward his sire. He is loath to ask such a menial task of her, but
If she's going that way, I'll happily courier the parchments myself. I'm sure she won't mind showing a young buck like myself the sights of London on the way.
You saying this to Juliet?
I thought he was talking about his sire.
I mean, sorry. I get names mixed up all the time. Damn it. Yeah. He's thinking of his goal. He needs to get the message to his goal, and Juliet is his sire.
So you want to deliver a message to give to Camille, your ghoul, to...
Yeah, Camille.
To get all of this together, and it's going to be delivered by the Raven, Juliet, who?
Well, from Michael's suggestion, it sounds as if he wishes to travel back to the Priory. Or am I incorrect?
You're dead on.
Yeah, with Juliet, and get the items himself.
Okay. But Tito is not going to be coming.
Tito intended to head straight for the eastern sewers with Simon. and Michael. And he wished to get these messages to the sheriff.
How fast do you think Genevieve can work her magic?
Yeah, true. I
You,
may be jumping the gun here.
you estimate it'll take probably, if she's working very quickly, it'll take at least, daylight hours for the word to get around for them to stop showing up to work at dusk. So you probably need at least a day anyway.
How late is it in this evening?
It's not terribly late. It's around 1 or 2.
I feel like it would be a waste of the night to not at least attempt to look, personally. But we should wait, because things have already been set in motion.
And as because Tito has enough dots in intelligence, I'll give you this one for free. You did tell your sire that at the end of the night you were going to she was going to help you transition to your new code.
Thanks for reminding me. Okay, then, so instead of all of that, Tito can head back himself to the Priory.
Is he going to speak this aloud?
He will speak. I believe this is all we can accomplish this night. And Tito looks around to gauge the reactions.
Right, so am I going to the Priory or nay?
Make an appearance etiquette roll. If you don't have etiquette, it's going to be at difficulty 7. Juliet gauges you, looking you up and down, and then looks back to Tito with an incredulous look. Doesn't immediately say anything yet, though. She seems to expect you to tell him off.
Another night, perhaps.
Alright, so am I coming with you? And bringing that back for old Jack, or no? Michael takes a pause.
And Tito
Yeah.
thinks for a moment. This would get things done quickly this night.
Michael pauses a moment and looks at Simon. You must be the smart one too.
What do you have planned tonight, Simon?
Nothing of any import.
Good. Could the both of you take the note I've been working on, and perhaps the leader of the cleanse, Juan Felipe, to the sheriff at the tower this night?
I don't see why not.
Settled then. Let us all go to the Priory. I will have arrangements made.
You've a hen cart, I hope.
We do on the grounds, I am
Excellent.
certain.
It wouldn't do to have a pair of ruffians like ourselves go carrying about a lifeless body.
And I would not expect to put you under such circumstances.
Well, you did just seem so confused. I did want to clarify matters.
Forgive me, these nights have been straining, to say the least. But I believe we're all on the same page now.
And at this, Genevieve, rising from her seat once more and looking back at you, straightens out her dress a bit. Yes, I have a number of contacts I must go and inform of the immediate changes to be made. If you'll excuse me, I bid you a good evening.
Of course, good evening.
Michael will nudge Simon in the side briefly. Have some context she could inform on?
Another time.
He waggles his eyes and grins lasciviously.
Simon doesn't look impressed. Or it's just, he doesn't really have any expression at all.
Genevieve exits, leaving the group of you with Juliet, who is sizing up Simon as well as Michael, and then she seems to be taking her leave as well, making for the exit.
Well, Tito intends to follow behind Juliet.
Well then, I guess we have some work to do.
A bit of courier service. Nothing to strain yourself over.
Nothing is ever easy.
Not said it was. Simply a relatively straightforward task. Not overly cerebral.
Things will get much more dangerous as we progress these nights. I do hope everyone realizes this.
You've no need to tell me about danger. I could tell you stories.
Good.
Have you ever outrun a lupin?
I've survived a horror. Perhaps something equal.
12 foot tall it was.
Yes.
Talons like bloody swords. It chased me for a good 20 leagues before it finally gave up the scent. And me just 10 years in the blood.
You face great danger. I can say I've met some similar circumstances, so...
It's the price one pays for a wandering life.
Please, can we stop comparing the size of our cocks and get on with it?
Tito will look forward, saying nothing more, as he continues on towards the Priory.
And the two of you following?
Aye.
Yes.
Alright. With that, we'll fade out of this scene as we follow the group. So rare for all three of you to go to the same place at once.
I know, isn't it?
Alright, the group of you the four of you actually, including Juliet, walk through these streets. So you make it back to the Blackfriar Priory, or the outside of it at least. And Juliet stops at the steps leading up to the main building, looking back to all of you. And I'm more specifically looking at Simon and Michael. I am sure the two of you do not mind waiting outside.
Of course not. Though if I promise to scrap the shite off my shoes, can I come visit?
She looks unamused.
Michael shrugs and has a seat on the steps.
And then she'll look knowingly to Tito and walk further into the priory. What is Simon and Tito doing?
Tito's preparing to enter in. He turns to address Simon and Michael. I will get everything ready. I won't be going with you for the delivery, however.
Figured no.
Very good. My ghoul Camille will be out shortly with everything you need.
Tell her not to forget the hand cards. It's quite important.
Tito nods. Of course. And then turns to enter the priory.
Alright. So you and Juliet enter the priory. And once you start walking down... We'll actually use this one. Once you start walking down the nave of the main chapel and you get a bit a ways from the entrance, Juliet turns to you. There is still enough time for the transition tonight, but I do not wish to rush these things. You may be surprised at the way time moves as you make this change. Perhaps at the beginning of the next night, would this simplify things for you?
I am ready to pursue the abyss.
Indeed, and I am ready to help you to the side. But in fact, I have plans for your slave, the Kanai. She is to be a special guest as part of this transformation, and so I require her attendance. If she must perform a task, it makes more sense that this wait.
She's not traveling with them. I'm sure it won't take long to get a cart and the notes.
She nods and continues further down. Then see to it that she is quick about finding this cart. And she leads you to it.
Tito nods, and his first goal is to seek out Camille.
It's not difficult to find her. She's right where you ordered her to be, at the side of Juan Felipe and tending to him. And right now you see that actually he's sitting up as you make your way down to the prison cell where he is kept. And the two of them look up to you. They were both quiet, but Camille looked attentive at least. But she rises quickly at your entrance and lowers her head respectively. And Juan Felipe weakly spits in your direction.
Tito looks at Camille. Perhaps a sorrowful gaze on his monstrous features.
My lord, what may I do for you this evening? I've seen to Father Felipe's feeding. He's doing quite well, as you can see. And she kind of gestures over to him, and he has a scowl on his face.
You've done a wonderful job, Camille. I have a couple of tasks for you.
Of course, I'm at your service.
First, prepare a cart. It seems that Juan Felipe is not fully up to walking this night. He will be transported.
You hear Father Felipe kind of weakly trying to rise, and he kind of speaks up to you. What do you mean to do with me?
You will live for now. And you will be someplace different. That is all I shall tell you.
He snarls a bit, but he's not quite up to standing yet. A cart, then, yes.
Yes. Have a guard escort him to the outer gates. There will be two waiting. Simon and a new face, Michael. As well as give them the note I was deciphering. It's in my study.
Of course, I'll see to it at once.
My thanks. Come back as soon as you finish your task.
She smiles and nods pleasantly, and begins moving in that direction, leaving you alone with the father. I have nothing more to tell you.
No, and I shall not be asking any more questions of you. You've played your part.
He narrows his eyes and folds his arms. A number of minutes later, you see that it looks like one of Juliet's other retainers, one of her acolytes, has come down. He's a fairly brawny-looking man, and he kind of looks at you as if for direction.
Tito will point towards Juan Felipe. Take him outside.
He nods quietly. At this point, you suspect a lot of these men have stopped questioning how much they should question you, especially given your countenance in these late nights. And you see him set to work about freeing and escorting Father Juan Felipe soon enough. And he's staggering, but he's able to make it up and out in the direction of the priory. Meanwhile, and back outside, Michael and Simon, you see that in short order, it looks like a woman that, Simon, you actually recognize her. You saw her the night that Conrad died. It's the woman that you were fighting to protect, that Conrad died fighting to protect. This woman you haven't seen in a long time, but she reemerges from the priory and moves around and brings forth a cart.
Simon looks very surprised.
You!
bringing the cart to a stop, she looks at you curiously. Sorry. Have we met?
You were there that night. I remember you.
Michael goes ahead and places a hand on Simon's shoulder. Now then, you're scaring the poor lass. Let her be.
Simon looks at the hand and his fangs descend.
You see that the girl takes a step back, but she's not in utter horror at this. I apologize if I upset you by my sight. I serve Lord Vega here. I've brought a cart for a delivery of sorts, and some papers important to him.
You're Camille?
Michael doesn't miss a beat. There's a good lass. We appreciate the service. You tell Tito if he's not careful, I'll steal you away for myself.
She looks at you and then looks back to Simon, a bit intrigued or perhaps curious. I am Camille Lavelle. How did you know my first name?
I told you I was there the night those men came. The night the large man, Conrad, died. Do you remember?
You see her eyes go wide with a mixture of fear and anguish at recalling that night. I'll never forget that night. You were there.
You need not fear that night either. You're safer here than anywhere else on Earth.
I believe you. I know that is true. Lord Vegas has been ever so kind to me.
Are we talking about the same man?
You see a mixture of love and certainty in that love, but you see a trembling in her lips. There's a fear there as well.
Say no more. Let us complete our task.
She nods and helps organize some of the papers in the cart. And after that, you see that another man has emerged, and he has Father Felipe, whom you recognize from the night he was abducted, looking a bit shabby, a bit dirty, but a bit pale too. He looks quite frail, but all limbs intact at least.
Have you a blanket, lass?
Yes, of course. I apologize. I'll return to bring one here.
A tarp, something just to cover the poor sod. I hate to go transporting him like this, in full view of the public. It's late, but not late enough.
And she disappears back into the priory.
Michael's going to approach the father. Here, we'll be taking you to be tended to. You look out of sorts.
What am I going? He says, kind of turning to you, looking irritated and angry and uncomplaining.
You're to be returned to your master.
His eyes go wide with fear. What? I was told I would live.
Aye, you'll live.
It'll be a very long time before I get to die if I return to him now.
Well, there is another option. If you're willing to play along for a bit.
And he'll look from you back to Simon.
Simon's not going to get in the middle of this. He'll just set to get in the cart ready to go.
Lay down in the cart. We'll keep you out of sight. Don't make any sudden movements and try to be quiet. we'll see to delivering you to a safer place, yeah?
He falls silent and leans back in the cart, seeming either defeated or accepting. And around this time, looks like Camille has come back out with a blanket, a few blankets in fact, and begins covering Father Felipe up. Is there anything else I can help with out here?
Michael's going to be shoving the notes and parchments into his satchel so they don't get ruffled during the transport. No, you've been a lovely help, lass.
She smiles and nods. And then it looks like she's heading back in the direction of the Priory, the mailing.
Now, Felipe, I've a companion for you. He's no spring chicken, but he'll hopefully dissuade any close glances. And he makes kind of a kissy noise towards the darkness.
Simon looks towards the darkness with an "oh, what now" look on his face.
And a fuck off big cat comes trotting up the stairs.
What the fuck is that?
That is Irsa. Michael pats the blanket where he expects Father Felipe's lap to be, and something that's easily the size of a small dog or medium-sized dog climbs up in the cart and lays down.
You see it's fairly compliant, although it looks very odd. Simon, you've never seen a cat this large in maybe all of England. But it's here in the middle of London.
Do you know the story of Irsa? He's the king of the cats, you know.
You're not going to be telling stories the whole time, are you?
It's kind of my occupation.
I might choose to shove something sharp in my ears and hope they don't heal.
Oh, it's just maybe. To each their own.
We should be on our way.
Of course. He'll lift the handcart and begin wheeling it away. Remember, Father, stay quiet, stay still. Your son won't have to correct you.
You see some mild shuffling in the cart, but you don't hear anything else as the two of you make your way off and disappear into the streets of London. Are you trying to hide the cat, or is it just kind of sitting on top?
Yeah, he'll move one of the blankets over the cat.
Okay. So the two of you make your way off down the streets and in the direction of the Tower of London. And with that we will... Well, let's see. We're about 2 hours in. Yeah, I'm gonna have us take a break a little bit early. Since it's a little bit later in the night for us, we're about 2 hours in. So we'll pause here before we continue. And we will come back in about 10 minutes. Sound good?
Word. Are we going to follow Simon and Michael around, or are we going to give Tito some time?
We are going to follow Simon and Michael because Tito's thing is going to occupy a lot of in-game hours.
Fair enough.
Phew.
Also, did you arrange for Simon to stay at the Priory? Is that what the plan was?
Oh, good point. I forgot about that.
Good thing you have 4 intelligence, or I wouldn't tell you shit. You think I'm joking?
Yeah, kind of on me for just not remembering promises from last session.
Note.
Um,
Take better notes.
yeah, I should. Yeah, if there's like an open room or something.
Yeah, the cloister, traditionally used to hold clergy. Of course, now it holds whoever Juliet wants it to hold.
He'll pitch it to Juliet.
Scott here.
Indeed.
It lives.
Alright, we got everybody back?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Then I think we can get started again. We follow Simple Simon and Michael McGavin as they cart this man, Juan Felipe, and these documents through London with this oversized cat stowed away. And you make it up to the front gate of the outer wall again. And it takes a bit more convincing to get them to let both of you in with this carriage. It just takes longer for messages to get relayed, but you get the sense that the sheriff was expecting you at this point. He was expecting somebody, and your 2 names come up, and eventually you're allowed in with this cart of whatever, and you make your way back into the White Tower, where you've traditionally met people of importance in the court. And sure enough, you see the sheriff is not at the throne, but some way down the aisle, kind of pacing back and forth. And he sees the 2 of you kind of carting in. He kind of folds his arms together, looking impatient. About time. Is this it?
We've brought you a gift. Michael will throw the blanket off, and the cat will grudgingly jump out.
What the hell is that? He takes a step back, kind of reaching for his axe.
Don't trouble yourself. It's just Irison. You remember Irison.
I remember him being that big.
He eats well.
Must you bring that thing through the city and into the tower? He says, kind of looking around.
If we had been stopped, I'd have needed a reason to be moving a cart covered in blankets. A cat that size playing dead would have raised a good deal fewer questions than what else I've got under here. And he pulls another blanket aside to reveal Father Felipe.
And you can see the father looks up a bit intimidated at the size of Jack, who just gauges him stoically. But he turns to Simon. And these documents, this proof Tito had.
I haven't looked them over myself. If he says they're up to snuff, then you'd know better than I the value of the man's word. But he pulls them out of his satchel.
Go ahead.
Everything he's brought us.
I vouch for Tito's word on it. Those are the same documents I took from Marco's house.
He looks at you very seriously before taking the documents and looking them over.
Before you say it, yes, I know how serious that is. But whatever he's doing, I'm sure is more serious by far.
There's a lot of lost script here. Seems to have been mishandled in some way, but some of these words allude to some control over the cleanse, as you mentioned before. He kind of flips through some of the pages.
He's been a naughty boy.
If he sway within the church, is it possible he'd know a fella who knows a inquisitor? If you catch my meaning.
Now you think Marco Vespucci is responsible for the hunters?
I'm not saying any such thing. I'm simply suggesting that a fella connected in the right way could whisper the right words in the right ear and make a thing like that happen.
Well, it does seem to imply that he has some powerful connections in the church here. Bishop Stratford. That's a name that carries some weight.
Bishop, no less. I wonder how many clergy he'd be able to sway.
More than I care to think about.
Now you follow my thinking.
And there's some notes in here about some kind of... What is this? Red earth under his house? Did you mention this before?
I discovered it. Damnedest thing I've seen, really. You'd think a man of Marco's taste would have better sleeping arrangements.
Not all of this is damning, but my suspicion is raised, at the very least. I'll think on this. I'll look over the rest. Interrogate the man, see what we can get of him. Surely Ambrose can pull more from him than Whelp Vega. One way or another, we'll find out. Marco Vespucci is now of great interest to me. And he unceremoniously reaches into the bin and pulls out the man, Father Felipe, standing him on his feet. The father almost topples. And he collects the papers and the documents out of the cart in one large arm, kind of dragging the man behind. I'll take this. Keep up the investigation and see about that nosferatu. Find him.
Already on it, Jack.
He nods to you.
Gears are in motion, as it were.
And he heads off in the direction of one of these side exits down a hallway.
We'll just leave this here then, yeah? He's pointing at the handcart.
He's already gone. He either left you to do it or didn't care to respond.
Michael just kind of shrugs and starts walking back out the gate.
Are we going to bring that back to Tito?
Did you want to push it all the way back through London?
No.
Michael stops and gives it a second thought. Well, at least to get back outside. Come on then, Eder-san, back in the cart. Cover the cat back up and start wheeling it back out.
Well, that went well, I think.
Jack's a good shite. He'll take care of what needs to be taken care of as long as it's within his power. He does have a habit of putting a wee bit too much faith in those over him.
I hadn't noticed.
He's a damn fine soldier. There's not another man I'd rather swing a sword beside. But
Really, not one.
not a one.
I'll take your endorsement under advisement.
But, shall we say, he's not the most independent thinker I've met.
Well then, I do believe I have some other matters to attend to tonight.
Do you then?
Ones I just remembered.
Well, a fellow might take offense.
And I wouldn't say a fellow would be wrong to.
Don't worry there, Simon. I'll grow on you.
I've got enough tumors, thank you.
Oughtn't you have had them lanced yet?
I'm afraid that doesn't work on nosferatu flesh like it does on that of mortals. You wouldn't be delighted with the results.
Can't say I'm a huge fan of the current state here. But, as I said, you're prettier than Tito.
He shrugs that off.
It's a damn short yardstick to be sure. But
The difference is that he cleans up quite well.
I'll take your word for it. Of course, all this going on as he's wheeling out the cart.
I think here is where I'll bid you adieu. Is that not the word that the French use?
I wouldn't know. I've not met any Frenchmen.
My sire and I took a brief trip through Paris once. Didn't stay long.
My condolences.
The nosferatu there are spoiled by the decadence of their city. They did not take well to strangers among them.
Can't say I've not heard that nosferatu tend to be a wee bit insular, as it were.
Not always.
Oh, just a bit.
I shall have to tell you of some of my other travels sometime else.
We'll trade stories. I'm a collector, you know.
I simply cannot wait.
Well, apparently you'll have to.
Yes, what a pity.
You sound positively broken up over it.
I'm barely holding back the tears.
Don't waste the blood on me.
And he does smile at that, as horrible as it looks.
There's a good chap. It's not all dour nights and sour wine.
Just stay in London a little while and you might disagree with your own statement.
There's always something to be found. Just have to look a bit harder sometimes.
Most of it is shite hidden under the rocks.
Most of life is shite hidden under rocks. But there's always something buried underneath the shite.
I think you and I might get along after all.
Of course, sometimes it's more shite.
Good evening, Michael McGavin.
Here's hoping.
And Simon will step into the shadows and vanish.
And Michael will set about wheeling the handcart back to the priory, all the way back.
Alright. So Michael's heading in the direction of the Priory. Where's Simon going?
He's going to pay his old friend Marcus of Bathgate a visit.
Alright. What all are Simon's plans for the evening? Is he planning on going back to the Priory tonight?
He is not. Tito said he would be occupied the rest of the night, so... So his plan is to visit Marcus and do as he told Quin he was going to do. Which is to say, make him a ghoul.
Alright. So we will fade out from this scene. As the two of you depart. And we will follow Simon. We will follow Simon to see this happen as he makes his way through the streets back to Marcus of Bathgate as we change scenes. And not that much time passes while you're leaving the Tower of London. Are you trying, I guess I should ask, were you trying to leave without them knowing you're leaving, like bypassing the escorts and all that to save time?
Oh, no, I assumed that we were outside the gate by that time.
Oh, okay, fair enough. It's a minor detail. You're able to disappear into the shadows and make your way through the streets of London, and soon enough you find, of course, at this hour, Marcus's lights are on from within his hovel. You know that some fire must be going, or perhaps a few candles. It's kind of up on this hill, away from a few of the other buildings in the area, but looks like someone's active there.
Simon is going to put on a mask. He doesn't want to alarm his old friend.
Alright, go ahead and roll your Mask of 1,000 Faces, Manipulation, Performance, Difficulty 7. Yeah, you have, with fairly good precision, you have the face you want to put on tonight. Is it the default one that Simon usually goes to?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, you're able to come up with this shabby but passable appearance as you approach the cottage.
Sorry, somebody was talking at me. What'd you say?
Oh, nothing. Just that you're you're fine. As you're approaching the cottage, you're able to look the way you want.
Okay. Yes, he's wearing the scarred man's face. Ugly, but perfectly useful.
You think you hear some movement somewhere around inside the hovel. He's probably already awake.
And Simon will knock.
Almost preternaturally, the door opens quickly, and you see the giant eyes and weary but eccentric face of Marcus Bathgates. His long, kind of wild gray and white hair. Good evening, Simon. Yes.
Good evening, Marcus. Yes, Simon.
Yes, Simon. Come in.
Don't mind if I do.
I have to excuse the mess. You kind of enter. You see that there's a lot of things going on, which is not really out of the norm, out of the ordinary for Marcus. He seems often to have a few projects going at any time, and it's a bit of a mess inside. One of these is dinner, fairly certain. What can I do for you this evening?
In my wanderings throughout the city of late, Marcus, I've come to a few realizations.
Just a few?
My mind works slowly.
Ah.
It turns like the gears of some great clock.
He's kind of nodding as he's stirring pots and looking at pages and kind of grabbing pinchfuls of something and moving them into other containers.
I've discovered in my wanderings throughout the city that I am at an extreme loss of people I can trust. Even those who I thought were my allies, they turn out to be disappointing.
People disappoint, Simon. I learned this many years ago. This is why I'm here now.
Yes, and ever reliable you are, Marcus, ever reliable. Which is why I'm here tonight.
At that, he'll turn to you, looking confused.
Your bones creak now, Marcus. You walk with a bit of a limp, I see. You're getting old.
Bah. He raises a hand and kind of waves you off, looking back to the thing he's working on. These bones may make more sounds, but they're just as reliable as ever.
You might be able to convince yourself, but you can't convince me. I can see death hovering over your shoulder. Whether it's now or in a decade, it's but a pinprick of light on the great ocean to me.
You speak in more riddles tonight than in most nights, Simon. What are you speaking of?
I want to make you an offer, Marcus. Something you won't be able to find with all your vendors and potions.
Oh, I've heard this one a few times, Simon. Did not expect to hear it from you, though.
What do you think I'm trying to sell you, Marcus?
Well, I can't say, my boy, I can't say. Any number of unique spices or things you might perhaps think interested in, but I assure you I've either passed it up or collected it.
I'll need one of your glass containers and a knife. I will show you something you have never seen before.
He looks at you curiously and finds you a small container, small earthenware pot, and hands you a
Now watch carefully, Marcus.
And he'll actually take the knife and dig it into his wrist, with barely a gasp of pain.
Marcus doesn't yell out, but he watches with interest.
And he draws it across the artery until a spray of arterial blood squirts out into the vial.
He seems to be studying you and the wound carefully. He doesn't seem to show immediate alarm at what otherwise might be a grievous wound.
Then, as Marcus watches, he directs his blood towards the wound, closing it up before his eyes.
He purses his lips together, looking very interested. Now that's something I have not seen before. How on God's earth did you much do that, Simon?
I have every desire to tell you. But first, here,
He'll hand over the vial.
test it with your powders and your alembics. I'll give you one night. Tell me what you find.
He looks at it carefully and cautiously, peering in a bit. And
If you...
Go ahead.
If you like what it is you see, then tomorrow when I return, you need only tell me yes.
He looks at you very seriously, with more attention than you've generally received from him in the past. Very well, Simon. I'll do my due diligence. I'll have an answer for you tomorrow evening.
I have no doubt that you will, Marcus. For now, I bid you good evening.
Yes. Good evening, Simon. He says, nodding once, still looking at you very seriously.
Then Simon will depart as swiftly and silently as he came.
Alright. And you leave Marcus behind with your vial, your experiments being investigated on. What does Simon mean to accomplish at this point? It's getting very late now. It's perhaps 4 or 5 in the morning with all your running around. Getting into and leaving the tower itself is a laborious process.
He is feeling a bit peckish at this point, healing that wound in addition to not having fed in a couple nights. He thinks it's time to find himself a treat.
Alright. How does Simon mean to pursue that goal?
His normal antics, which is manipulation of the hearts of others, taking the shape of a beggar.
Well, you've already succeeded on the roll to use the mask. I won't make you make that roll again. So go ahead and do a manipulation empathy. The trick here is that the plague afflicting many of the Quin has not subsided, so a lot of the go-to boroughs and districts that you might have relied on in past nights are unreliable now. It's just not that easy to feed for anyone, really. So do a manipulation empathy, difficulty 7. You're able to find one person who's, you gauge, probably not sick given the area. You're kind of in this artisan area of the street. When you find someone who's walking alone, it's like a young man. And I'll say, since you succeeded on the roll, you're able to, play at his emotions and convince him to come close enough to, throw you a bob, throw you a coin.
Alright, Simon will move swiftly, taking the man by the wrist.
Yeah, at that distance, you're close enough to feed on him. How much do you need to take from this man?
He's rather hungry, so he's going to take 3 and hope the man doesn't die.
Yeah, at 3 points, you're... Let me double check if you need a control roll. What were you at before?
7.
I don't think that's hungry enough for like a frenzy check. And you're pretty well in control of your beast, so I'll forgo that. And the man is definitely unconscious after you feed on him. You see that it's all he can take, but you don't expect him to die from it. He was a fairly, sturdy, robust-looking man, and fairly young and looked of good color. So you think he'll probably be fine as he's kind of passed out on the road.
He'll leave him there to let the passersby think him a drunk.
All right.
Being careful to close the wound, of course.
Mm-hmm. Having, let's say that took about an hour's worth of effort, kind of finding this man and feeding and doing all of this. So it's very close to dawn, say around 5 in the morning now.
All right, he's going to try to find some hidey hole. He doesn't really have a haven anymore.
Any hidey hole in particular? What kind of hidey hole?
Oh, wow. An abandoned house, maybe?
Oh, okay. Do you care if it's in the Plague District? There are a lot of ones. There are a lot down there.
He won't get sick. He doesn't care.
All right. That being the case, it won't be terribly difficult. You know those neighborhoods, and a lot of people are starting to vacate those areas, the ones who can at least. So I'll give you a perception investigation, difficulty 5.
He hates the idea, being that he's completely unsafe, but he has no choice.
Yeah, you find your pick of the litter in the plague areas. There's a few homes that have been completely abandoned. You do find one home where it looks like some family members were actually left to die and their corpse rot and make this horrible rotting smell that fills the whole building. It's an inescapable stench, and you feel it just dig into you, just grab onto you once you walk in. It's like walking into a wall of this odor, but it is light proof. You find a basement. It's horribly disgusting. You're sharing a home with the dead, but it's not the sun.
Better than the sun. Yep. He'll find himself a place to curl up in the dark basement and go to sleep.
Alright. So you do that. Turning to Michael McGavin, you're able to bring the cart back to the priory. Doors are closed by this point. What does Michael mean to do now? It's around, say, 4 in the morning. You've got a couple hours left.
Not enough time to really do much of anything. He's probably just going to pick his way back towards the little hovel that he calls not dead.
Fair enough. So you and your oversized cat make your way...
And my raven.
And your raven make your way back to the hovel just outside London.
Yep.
And with that, we'll close the scene and turn back time just a little bit as we return to the priory, the interior. Alright, Tito, your sire, once you returned, everything was arranged, your sire instructed you to meditate for some time while she made a few arrangements, and to return to the altar when you felt you were ready to make this change, once you had enough time to think it over and be certain that there was nothing else holding you back.
And Tito believes he is ready as he'll ever be.
All right. You step into the nave of the main priory once more. It's emptied of all but 2 people. You see at the end, toward the chancel, the altar, there is your sire. Barefoot, but dressed in a simple black robe, pulled together, one layer across the other and ending around her shins, tied up in a sash around the waist. She is standing looking down from the raised platform, and you see beside her, below her, is Camille. She is present as well, standing there off the platform, and they both await you calmly, though Camille looks a bit concerned.
Tito stills himself and steps forward.
Camille looks to you, nodding and smiling, trying to force a smile at least. Good evening, my lord. Does everything fit well? She kind of breaks up as she feels the weight of Juliet's gaze and turns to her, which becomes a glare, and you sense she's not supposed to be saying anything.
Tito just looks at her and tries to muster a smile, something that resembles it.
It is time for you to shed the last vestige of your former life, my child. You must enter the void and return as a new creature, she says, raising her palms up with a content smile. There is but one act remaining before I guide you through this. And she looks down to you again, but places a small pale hand on Camille's shoulder. And Camille does not move, but you see her eyes dart nervously to the side.
Must Camille take part in this?
She looks at you with a very serious look. You have spoken to me of your control, your mastery over the beast, an important facet of your training. But I wish to see it for myself. And then with a quick motion, almost imperceptible, Juliet's light grasp on Camille clenches and tears downward from behind Camille, ripping her gown and shift from the back, sundering the cloth entirely, and her bare skin is exposed as the dress is ripped away from her, and Camille looks up to you, holding one arm across her exposed breasts and one down across her pelvis, a look of quiet fear and uncertainty on her trembling face. As she looks between the two of you quickly, my lord?
Tito, eyes grow wide. He looks towards Juliet. Yeah, you're not going to harm her, are you?
Me? No. I have no wish to harm her. That would be a waste. I wish for you to fuck her. And Camille's eyes widen looking to you, but she is silent as the low flicker of candle illuminates her stark naked form, and she is trembling in fear.
What purpose does this serve?
Control. It is a matter of control, my child. You are at the point I never pushed Robin to. That was my mistake as a sire before. That is why I suspect he failed. I did not push him as far as I have pushed you. This will not be difficult. Or rather, I should say, this should not be the easiest task in your given state. And when you are at that state, you will feel the hunger. If you are able to control it, she will live.
Something so degrading.
She seems to have no immediate response to that. She just looks at you expectantly. You have no earthly fetters for this, no need for them. The abyss will clothe you. Strip. She gestures to you abruptly.
And Tito closes his eyes for a moment.
Yeah, how is Tito reacting to this? How is he processing all of this?
He is not prepared for this. He doesn't want to forcibly take Camille.
Indeed, you do find it an odd request. Nothing in your study involves sex per se. There's nothing really sexual about this road. It's certainly out of the ordinary. And you realize that you have a cold, dead body, and you are very removed from humanity. And in order to simulate life, to have sex, to imbue your body with life from the vitae, it will take a considerable amount of vitae to bring you back in touch with that enough. Out of game, I can tell you, or out of character, I can tell you it'll take 7 points of vitae because you're at 1 humanity in order for you to simulate working sex organs again.
Tito will look once more to Camille.
Camille is timid and uncomfortable, clearly, but you can see the desire and longing in her eyes. And given the blood oath, you know that she would not be difficult to convince. Although clearly this is not how she probably imagined this going. What does Tito do?
What does Tito do? Tito will look into Camille's eyes and ask her, is this truly what you want?
Her lips tremble with uncertainty, but she looks to you and then looks back to Juliet, who just glares at her. And she looks back to you and tries to nod once.
And Tito looks at her again. Do not feel pressured. Tell me your true feelings.
Speak, slave. And this draws her Camille's attention back once before she turns back to you. My lord, deny attraction, but not like this. And she kind of looks back again, looking very nervous. You can see she's very scared. You can see that more and more in her. I do not understand. I understand many things are different around here. Mistress Juliet has been kind enough to harbor me, and I've not questioned. I would be of any service to you. Her voice trails off. But you sense the fear and reluctance in her.
No. This is not how it should be done.
Juliet turns to you, glaring. You are not at the point where you can endure the beast, and I will not suffer a child to fall to a sail.
I don't intend to. If it's temptation you need, my bloodletting should be enough.
And for just a moment, you see something like a flash of anger across Juliet's face. And with another quick motion, she brings her leg into the back of Camille, into the back of her knee, collapsing the leg and making Camille fall to the ground as she cries out in pain and agony, which echo off the walls. She is not going anywhere, and neither are you.
At this, Tito's anger is growing.
Camille,
His hold to his mistress is still strong. Go ahead.
sorry, I wrote wrong name. Juliet sees this growing anger in you, and she steps down from this platform. She steps down from the altar and takes a few steps forward, reaching up to your face, even as you are growing angry. Have I ever led you astray? Have I ever deceived you?
No. But I'm sure there's a better way.
No, my child. This is the way. You must put your trust in me. You must be willing to let this canaille die for you. You must be willing to subject her to the worst evils, even at your own action. You must not be fettered by them. And I need to see this. Her heart beats for you, I have seen it. Through the blood oath, yes, but perhaps more. I need to see that this is not what holds you back. Show me that I have chosen wisely. Succeed where Robin failed. And she lets go of your hand and takes a step back. And Camille is trying to sit back up, and you can see tears in her eyes as she's holding at her breast and looking up to you. It is all right, my lord. and she winces in pain, holding at her leg. I will be fine.
No, this is too bestial even for me. I'll do anything to chase the abyss with you, mistress, but not this method.
Juliet, having taken a few steps back, her jaw shifts, looking up to you. You see what looked like compassion dissipating into anger again. And you can see, kind of flickering against the walls, the shadows are moving in ways they shouldn't. They're starting to circle the three of you. It is regrettable that you do not find this an acceptable transformation. But it is your only way forward. There is no return. You are too close to the beast for any other. You will transition, he says, and you get for the first time that she is actually intimidating you, perhaps with the threat of life.
Tito will stop for a moment, consider that his unlife could end in these next few moments.
During this time, Juliet kind of moves over to Camille and with her foot kind of pushes her around. Heal your wound, slave. It'll be easier, I suspect. She says, turning to look at Tito again. I will leave her to you. If she flees, it will be your responsibility, but I do not believe she will.
Very well.
And around this time you see that Camille is kind of looking down at her leg, and you can see that it's starting to straighten out. It looks less contorted. And she looks up to you, still exposed. The tears are still on her face, but she's not crying anymore. She just looks uncertain.
Tito will, one last moment, close his eyes as he whispers he's sorry. And he will spend that 7 blood points.
And as you do, and the beast roars inside of you in defiance against this, you feel life come back to you in a way it hasn't in what feels like ages and lifetimes, and your skin rushes with warmth again and life. And Camille has risen, and you see that perhaps the hiding of the beast, of course you looked like a monster previously, you look something like a man again. And Camille rises, approaching you, finally lowering her arms and looking more at ease as she exposes herself fully to you as the two of you finally embrace. And her hands wrap around the back of your neck, her breasts pressed up against you as she is finally penetrated. And the scene cuts away to show Juliet's face, watching intensely as the two of you begin to join each other carnally. And we hear off screen the sounds of Camille moaning as Juliet casually pulls at the sash by her waist, letting the robe peel open. And she steps out, letting it fall to the floor. For now she bears herself entirely stripped, pale and nubile. Shadows and dark tendrils begin to amass and move around her, moving across her curves and circling you and Camille. The priory around you is less and less visible as the shadows take solid form and form their own dark chapel around the three of you. The blackness snaking across Juliet's breast and undulating around her. And this forms as she draws ever closer to the two of you. Camille hasn't seemed to even taken notice as the two of you have begun to have sex, and Juliet draws closer, but Tito, you would notice this. How is Tito processing this?
Brings a sense of fear as he recalls when he was first turned.
Indeed, you do see the shadows move as they did then, like when you were embraced. And Juliet approaches from behind Camille as she is atop Tito, and reaches over to grab Camille's breast, and incisors lightly with her nails, letting the blood start to drip down in front of you. And Juliet steps back, and immediately, instinctively, your beast pulls you to Camille's breast to feed, as you are now very hungry. Make a self-control roll, difficulty 8. Alright, 2 successes. So you see and you feel the beast in you. The beast is here, it's alive, and it's moving through you. And you see this blood come down from Camille's breast, but you subdue the beast long enough to pull away from Camille, sensing the beast. And you disconnect for a moment, and you see that Camille has grown pale, and she is leaning back with her mouth agape in ecstasy. And pulling back, you see that Camille is actually leaning against the bare form of your sire, whom is feeding on her neck from behind. But Juliet retracts at the same time, her lips and chin drenched in blood. Juliet's eyes are closed and fangs extended in this horrifying and beautiful countenance. And you see that Camille has grown faint enough that she is growing more and more out of it. Juliet sets a faint Camille down and kneels beside you. Her face comes close to yours, and she kisses you on the lips with Camille's blood still there, and you taste Camille's blood. And at this point, you feel darkness envelope you, and your vision begins to change. How is Tito handling this?
Tito is intoxicated with all the powerful feelings that are going on right now. He's trying every bit he can to hold back the beast.
In game terms, you are now having a moment of truth, Tito. This is your transition from humanity to the path of the abyss. And there is a very real chance that with one humanity, if you fail, your character will fall into a sail, and you will lose the character completely, permanently. Do you fight this sensation at the last moment and try to hold on to your humanity, or do you embrace it and cross over?
Tito feels if he quits now, it would have all been for naught. He will push on.
Alright, you close your eyes to your sire's face just inches from you, and you open them again to see a different scene. You are not in the Priory now. You're not even in London, or perhaps even Europe. You see a desert, desolate and lifeless. You're atop a ridge of sand with nothing for miles around you. The sun is above you, but it's not the sun you fear, as it's eclipsed with a red outline that dimly paints the sky in a dusky crimson. And across from you, on this same ridge of sand, you see a figure turning slowly to you. And you realize it's you, or something like you. Humanoid, but monstrous, even more monstrous than you, with distended claws and fangs and eyes of pure gold. It is the beast within you, in this land removed from time. What does Tito do?
Tito stares at his bestial self and takes a stance as if ready to do combat with it.
The beast screams and moves at impossible speed across the dune to tackle you, and it bites into you, into your neck with its horrible maw. You will need an extended willpower roll to win this battle, and every roll costs a willpower point. If you run out of willpower before 10 successes, you lose your character to the beast. You may add your dots in mentor to this roll because your sire is helping you. The difficulty is 10 minus your remaining virtues. So in this case, you'll be rolling 9 dice, difficulty 6, to begin the struggle. You begin to make some progress as you bite into this beast, and you thrash across the dunes, and intermittently you can hear your sire through the chaos and the turmoil and the raging beast. Intermittently, you sometimes see Juliet's face, and other times the beast and the desert. You hear her voice from the sky. Focus on me, Tito. Focus on my voice. Remember your lessons. Let the void be your mind. Clear your mind of all but darkness. Describe Tito during this time.
Tito hears the voice. He continues on.
And roll again. Continue to make progress. You're now at 3 successes. It's a difficult fight. It's the greatest and most exhausting battle you've ever been in. You feel it is just as strong and just as dangerous as you are. You hear Juliet's voice from somewhere in the sky. Do not let the beast deceive you. You are stronger than it. It fears you. Control it. Roll again. Now it's 7 successes. You have 4 willpower remaining. You continue to fight, you continue to thrash and grapple with this beast. And you feel you are gaining the upper hand. You are almost overcoming it. Go ahead and roll again. Finally, after what feels like perhaps years of fighting this, it's difficult how time moves in this land. You feel that you are defeating this thing, this beast inside you. And at last you feel, as you are grappling it, it collapses in your arms into ash, which dissipates and is lost in the sand beneath you. And the sky turns black as night until there is nothing to see. And you open your eyes once more and see Juliet's face again. You are back in the Priory. You have now transitioned to the path of the abyss. And because you transitioned with the aid of your mentor on the same path, you are starting off at a path reading of 3. What do we see when we come back to Tito and he feels this? He sees the world anew.
Tito has renewed clarity. The beast is no longer hounding him at every moment. He has just a peace of mind.
And as you come to, you see you are on your back, and your head is in Juliet's bare lap, her forearm wrapping around your neck in a controlling movement. And raised above you in her other arm, in her other hand, you see a stake raised and ready, but her eyes search yours, mouth slightly open and lips with dried blood on them, with Camille's blood.
I have succeeded.
Juliet smiles brightly at you and lowers the stake, of bringing a hand less in a controlling fashion and more to run through your hair. No, you are truly my child. Looking around, you don't see Camille anymore.
And Tito looks around. He speaks up. Where is Camille?
I sent her away. It has been hours since you last saw her. It will be dawn very soon.
Yes. I am tired after this.
She nods, somewhat knowingly. You have done more than I could ever hoped. I understand your reluctance, but you succeeded. And she looks at you with these glittering eyes of hope and wonder, as if she's looking at something she's never seen before. And she sets your head down and rises, reaching for her robe and replacing it.
Tito will groggily stand up.
And as you stand up, you can see the rest of the Priory better. The candles you saw previously are far more melted down. It's difficult to say exactly how long passed. Apparently some number of hours have. But as you're looking down the priory, you catch something by the exit. You see a familiar face peering out from around the exit. You see Ellen Alice, her mouth agape and eyes large, staring at you in disbelief. You see her only for a few moments longer before she backs away and leaves.
Tito stands and silently departs to his chamber to sleep for the coming dawn.
When you reach your chamber, you actually find that Camille is laying there asleep on your bed where you would be. She seems passed out.
And Tito, remembering what he has done, realizes that it was all necessary to further his path. He can't let anything stand in the way of the abyss.
Indeed, her naked form crumpled up on your bed gives you new thoughts. You don't view her in the same way. Even at your lowest point of humanity, it is different now. It's alien. You can't imagine pretending to be like you were earlier, to be alive again. It's a strange thought that occurs to you.
And indeed, it is a strange feeling. Strange thoughts are in his mind as he assesses the situation. For now, he will lift Juliet up.
Camille?
Camille. And set her upon the floor with a blanket and go to his usual spot that he sleeps and drifts away into slumber.
And you do so. It doesn't take very long at all before you feel the sun weigh you down into sleep. And with that, the scene fades. And you may replace your dot of conscience with a dot of conviction. We exit this scene as the night ends, as dawn rises, another day passes, and we move back to the streets of London, watching time pass until dusk settles again. And we turn back to Michael McGavin. As you rise, lose a blood point, of course. What do you mean to do now that the night has set?
There was talk of searching the sewers. Of course, he doesn't know where to meet any of these three, or these two. So he's going to go to the most logical place he can think of. I'm going to say Elysium, honestly.
That's a pretty good bet.
Chances are good.
All right.
It would be a bit too presumptuous to pop up outside the Priory again.
And Simon, as you're rising, you were fortunate that at least this night no one decided to enter this plague-ridden, corpse-filled home in the daylight or search its basement. You rise, feeling that the stench and decay and perhaps death itself has soaked itself into your body. But you're rising, you don't feel any different yourself. What do you mean to do? What do we see with Simon?
Tonight, Simon aims to return to Marcus first and see what his decision will be.
All right. We'll start there.
Although he feels pretty disgusting.
Indeed, you do feel like the reek and stench of death just clings to you wherever you go. But in short order, you make your way out of the plague district and back in the direction of Marcus Bathgate's home, where, as expected, lights are on. You're certain he's up by this point, and that you're outside.
Alright, I'm going to put on the mask again.
Alright. I'll forgo the roll. You succeeded once. I'm not going to have you keep rolling for this.
Alright, and he will knock again.
This time it takes about a minute or so before the door opens, and you see a much more serious and focused Marcus come out. Simon, why don't you come in?
Thank you, Marcus.
And Simon will step inside.
And he closes the door and looks at you, nodding fervently. Yes.
Excellent. There is no pomp or ceremony to it. I must only present you my blood, and you must drink.
He looks at you almost unconvinced, but you suspect he's beyond that. So he slowly nods.
I must warn you, my friend, I don't smell too good this evening. Through no fault of my own.
Yes, well, I wasn't going to say anything. I don't always smell so ripe myself. Leave you to it, your own business.
In a moment, you're not going to care.
He seems to wait patiently for you.
Simon, even through the mask, will reveal his fangs now.
You see kind of a gulp on Marcus.
And he will bite into his own wrist with a wet slurping sound.
He studies you very carefully, like almost a philosopher or someone studying science.
Now, drink until I tell you to stop.
He takes it after a brief hesitation, and begins drinking it, at first watching you, but quickly closing his eyes and gorging himself on the drink. Simon, what is this? How is this from you?
An ancient magic, my friend.
He finishes it quickly and sets it down with a bit of a pound on the table. Is there more?
In due time. But first, how do you feel?
You can see his eyes are wide, and he's kind of flexing his hands and kind of bringing his arms up to himself. I feel like I was 40 again. Perhaps even younger.
Yes, the magic is working within you then.
Magic. Is that what you call it? There's some science behind this. There's some theory guiding the humors here. There must be. There must be. He says, kind of turning away and looking at the empty cup again.
Perhaps there is, but it is not for our minds to discover it. There are those much older than we who wish to keep it a secret.
Well, with whatever years this has given me, I intend to find out precisely.
The way I understand it, my friend, so long as you drink from the fount of my wrist, you will never die.
His eyes are large at that statement. Time enough to study a great deal of many things, I imagine.
Yes. And perhaps in due time a greater gift by far. But for now, you will serve me in this capacity. You have become something that is called ghoul.
He looks at you a bit confused, but definitely paying attention to you. A ghoul.
And I am your master, your regnant.
Master. Don't rather like the sound of that, but I can't help but thank you for this opportunity. A lifetime, many lifetimes of study.
Don't worry, Marcus. I'm a man who believes in free agency. I shall simply have some things for you to do, and you will do them. And otherwise, your time will belong to you.
He nods. I don't know what to say, Simon. No one has ever presented a gift of this magnitude. I know not if one exists in comparison.
Time will tell whether you think it's the gift that you believe it to be now, or something else entirely.
He gulps again and looks at you seriously, giving you a nod. But why me? Why now? Why not any number of people?
Because, as I've told you, I'm in the need of friends. And there aren't many left I can trust.
I see. He nods again. Well, you can count on me, of course.
Yes. Of that I'm certain. Tomorrow evening I shall have a task for you. But tonight, revel in this gift I've given you. Leave this place, it's getting stuffy. See the city again, Marcus.
He peers out the window into the streets, a bit timid and cautious, like a rat looking out of a hole for the first time in a long time. Yeah, perhaps so. Thank you, Simon.
Thank me later.
He seems puzzled, but he nods.
One day I shall show you my true face, my friend. Then we'll see if you still want to thank me.
His eyebrows kind of furrow together, perplexed. Not entirely what that means. Not entirely sure.
You will.
He goes back to looking at this earthenware container with what remains, what droplets remain, bringing his finger into it and kind of playing it around and bringing it back up to his lips.
I'll see you tomorrow, Marcus.
Yes. Tomorrow. Good evening.
Good evening.
And he will make a mock bow and depart.
And so you do. Having begun the ghouling of Marcus Bathgates, where does Simon mean to head off to now?
Pop Lolly seems the most likely place.
Alright, good answer. And lastly, returning back to a newly risen Tito Vega. Tito, when you rise, you find that Camille is not on your floor anymore, but nothing else really seems out of the ordinary. Of course, you feel rising tonight, you feel this outlook on life has changed a great deal about your perception of the world and how things frame around in it. What do you mean to do now that you're rising? Feeling the beast in control, more in control than it has been in a long time.
Peter will get dressed and seek out Juliet, his sire.
That's not difficult. As you make your way through the priory, you find her in her circular chamber, her private quarters, and there are a number of acolytes, these followers, her herd and retainers you've gathered around, and she seems to be with them, saying something, but as you enter, everyone turns to you, retainers, herd, and Juliet herself. And Juliet just kind of looks at them as they look to her, and they depart, they disperse, passing by you. Maybe a dozen or 24 of them kind of file out, passing by you, leaving you alone with Juliet in her chamber. And she has a smile on her face. She looks very pleased to see you.
Good evening, mistress.
Good evening, my child. And she walks up to look at you again, kind of sizing you up, and you can see that she's doing this assessment again. You look much better.
I am.
How do you feel?
For now, I feel a drive. There's much that needs to be looked into.
I understand you are inextricably linked and muddled in the jihad. That is as much my doing as anyone in this city, and that this must be resolved. But it is now more important than ever it has been that you remember all that I have taught you. Remember the abyss and your study. Not for preparation, but for growth. For the maintenance of your control. She nods at you.
Yes. I will diligently seek nourishment from the abyss.
I am glad that you did not turn away last night. I realize what I put you through was not easy. Nor was it easy for me when my sire had me pass through these rituals. But one, I hope you will forgive me in time, and perhaps understand more. Yes? She says, looking up to you with a bit of a hopeful look.
I understand fully. You did not wish for me to allow any sort of morality impede me.
She nods. And you kept your Kanai. I'm sure she will be thrilled to see you in more control.
I'm sure she would.
I set her to a few tasks while you slept, but she is somewhere here.
My thanks.
She nods once, closing her eyes briefly. And if I heard correctly, it seems you will be busy this evening looking into this individual in the waterways?
Yes, I must seek out this Harper.
She nods, but her smile is fading. As in times past, I would caution you against and advise you against going yourself. There are others you may send, but I also understand the gravity of this predicament. So I understand your need to leave. Go then and be careful. She brings a hand up to your cheek briefly before turning and returning back to her seat at the center of this chamber.
Tito, as he's been accustomed to, bows before turning and taking his leave.
All right. And where is Tito going now that he has left?
He plans to head to Elysium to await the others.
Well, that makes my life easier. So we will transition to Elysium as this scene fades out and you leave your sire again. All right. Returning back to Elysium, underneath Pop Lollies. Michael, you are the first to arrive. Is there anything in particular you want to do while you're waiting here for Simon and Tito?
I think he's going to make an entrance. He's going to come in with the bird on his shoulder and the cat at his feet.
That definitely draws stares and looks of interest and intrigue.
See if he can't reel in a few fish.
Bella looks interested from a distance, but she's not getting any closer. Is there anyone in particular you're hoping comes to, or anyone you're looking for?
I know fellow gangrel are not going to be frequenting here. I'll just say. I'd say probably no. No one in particular he's gonna seek out. But he is making eye contact with pretty much anyone who looks his way.
Alright, give me one moment to look over something. Right now I'm just looking at who, if anyone's there, would approach you. Or at least approach to investigate these animals.
Rebecca might.
Indeed. You would know who Rebecca Godfrey is, and you would probably know who Helen is. And you see that two of them have approached you as you make your way in. And Helen's kind of keeping her distance, but she's clearly interested. Rebecca Godfrey seems a lot less timid, and walks up to your cat, kind of kneeling down. Oh my, how interesting.
I found him on the moors of Ireland.
And this bird, where did this come from?
She's just a raven. This is Morgan. She's been with me, I believe it's 20 years now.
That's quite a long time. They're so well behaved. She's looking at them and kind of reaching her hand out cautiously to the cat.
When Irisan purrs, it's a hell of a thing. Imagine a Harley revving about 4 blocks away.
That causes Rebecca to kind of stand up a bit. Well, they're welcome in Elysium, so long as they maintain this good behavior.
As long as no one sets a hair loose, we should both be fine.
Yes, I heard a couple of complaints the other night, but pish-posh, honestly. They're not really bothering anyone, I don't see the problem.
I promise Morrigan won't shite on anyone's dress.
Well, that would be unfortunate.
Your son's been with me a deal longer. He's going on 35 now.
And she looks at the raven with interest. I see. You keep more companions of the animal variety than your own, I see.
I find them a deal more trustworthy.
Huh. She kind of chuckles at that. Well, I suppose you're not wrong.
No. Animals tend to be just rather straightforward in their urges and desires. He winks a little bit.
She smiles at that. Well, in truth, I haven't seen far too many of your kin. Of course, I think Nikolai is somewhere around here. And there was that new Italian, but she never comes here. Have you met Taziana?
No, that's a new name. I don't believe I've seen her attend too many of the Althings.
No, I understand her to be very new to the Isle. Apparently her sire knew Ambrose in some way, and now she's here. But, I've also heard that dear Jack has had to break up a few fights with her.
Interesting. I had known that the Italians had such fiery blood. If you see her, point her my way.
She looks kind of left and right, looking to see who's around. Well, from what I've heard, she's mostly been squatting in the Toreador territory. I don't believe she has a haven in the city yet. Plus all the fights.
We're not want to keep permanent residences like you want. Allow me to extend the deepest apologies on behalf of my clan for any trouble she might have caused you. The young can be, shall we say, a bit difficult to curb.
No, she's caused me no trouble. Hasn't really come to Elysium. I hear most of these things secondhand. I've seen her once or twice in the streets. Quite a firebrand, that little body. But, the Toreador have certainly had enough of her, I'm certain. You know, myself excluded, of course, she says with a glittering smile.
Where are my manners? In case my name hasn't preceded me, Michael McHaven.
Oh, I know quite a bit about you.
Nothing too raunchy, I hope.
Just the proper amount of raunchiness.
Is there ever a proper amount?
She smiles at that. Well, in any case, a few other people I need to speak to. Wish you a good evening in my Elysium. Please let me know if there's anything I can do.
Do keep that boldness about you. Most of these are too timid to approach a cat of this size. One night I shall tell you the tale of Irusan, king of the cats. He's a king, you know.
She smiles and then looks back to Helen, who's kind of inching forward, but still a bit too far. Yes, well, poor Helen. I think she had some kind of run-in with cats or lions or some such at some point. But in any case, yes, sir. I'll keep my boldness.
Michael reaches down and Scratches the cat behind on the back of the head. He's no lying, though he thinks so sometimes.
She looks down at it, smiling a bit, and back to you, nodding once. Good evening.
He kind of mumbles to the cat. King of the Keishi, he is.
And around this time is when I think Tito Vega enters Elysium. So Tito, you enter and see that looks like Michael has brought another animal tonight.
Tito looks at it curiously. He steps over towards Michael to greet him.
Michael you'd be forgiven for thinking that Michael is holding a cord of his own. Everything come out all right.
It did.
You're looking a bit lighter in the loafers.
I am at peace now.
It's not to last, I'm afraid. What was that lass's name she gave me? Tabo?
I'm sorry.
Oh, Rebecca mentioned one of my clanmates. I'm trying to recall the names. Something with a T.
You have no idea who he's talking about, Tito.
Can I get the storyteller to spell it out for me?
Well, let's see. How's your intelligence doing? Okay. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. It's
No.
Taziana.
See, it's an unusual name, that's why I couldn't remember it.
Fair enough.
But can you Taz, T-A-Z? I'm
Yes.
trying to make notes.
Taziana.
I would call that Tiziana.
T-A?
I spelled it T-I. Never mind. Carry on, as you were.
Yeah, you don't know who he's talking about, Tito.
A name I've not heard before.
Nor I. But apparently she's given the Clan of the Rose no end of trouble.
Surely. Did I seek you to talk some sense into?
Oh, no direct request was made. That would be the bones. But a name was mentioned in a vague description given. Some small Italian woman. Apparently a firebrand.
Well, perhaps an opportunity will arise.
Do miss the wild Irish roses of my youth.
And around this time, Simon, you're now entering Elysium, and you see it looks like Tito and Michael are together. Michael has his animals.
That's the direction in which they'll drift then.
He is making kind of a spectacle of himself.
He'll stop until he's acknowledged by them.
Greetings, Simon.
Greetings, he says, moving forward a bit more then. Tito, there's something different about you.
Yes. I've subjugated my beast.
I was going to say you've washed your face, but I suppose that makes more sense.
Don't worry, you're still the pretty one to me, Simon.
Your flattery won't work on me.
Give it time.
You have intriguing taste.
That's what they all say. Not yet figured out what they mean quite.
I have come with a purpose, of course.
Aye, the waterways.
Yes.
Are we all prepared to set out?
Do you think that Rebecca has had enough time? Genevieve has had enough time?
I won't be certain unless I speak with her, but perhaps it is still too early.
Is Genevieve floating about?
She is.
Well, then let's go ask her.
Let's.
Michael pops himself up and meanders in that direction.
Tito as well.
It looks like Genevieve is speaking with her child, Caleb, whom you recognize, Tito at least recognizes. And she rises, dismissing her child and stepping towards the group of you. Ah, yes. Good evening.
Good evening. How have the preparations been?
They've gone very well. It was actually a very simple task of finding the kind that I needed. You'll find that the Ventru are more than capable of maneuvering these institutions when needed.
Excellent.
Do you mean to go in tonight?
It is being considered. Would you say everything is in motion for tonight?
Well, it certainly should be. If it is not, then there are a few kind I will have to replace.
Understood.
You won't fault us much if they don't come back out then.
She looks at you with a bit more seriousness behind her eyes. I did a request on his behalf, gesturing to Tito, out of a mutual benefit. Please do not make me regret this by adding to a body count.
Fair enough. Simple question.
Hopefully, we will run into no one down there, but every effort will be taken to spare life, as long as they do not hinder us.
That is good. With the increase of these hunters, I should very much like to not be involved in any investigation. You'll understand why I am entrusting you to this with such care.
Of course.
Good.
My lady, thank you for preparing this for us. We must be about our business now.
She does a bit of a dip and a curtsy.
And Tito performs a slight bow as he prepares to leave.
Well, that was easy enough.
That it was. I
would-
trust we're all good for tonight.
I'll just point out that loose lips do have a habit of sinking ships. So, the option needs to be offered. I'd rather not leave too many live ones that might go speaking about three odd fellows mucking about in the shite of London. Or in the sewers.
Yes, our first goal will be to not be seen, if such an occasion does happen. Oh. Pity upon the soul.
Doc Whitaker's fallen to the Thames all the time.
It is dangerous work after all.
I've a fellow I work with occasionally who's fished more than a few bodies out.
What is Simon doing this time?
Waiting patiently as Simon ever does for all the talky talks to do their thing.
Michael will give a little wave at Rebecca and make for the door.
She smiles politely as you go.
And Tito will head towards the door as well, beckoning Simon.
At which point Simon will follow, looking relieved.
Alright. The three of you set off, leaving Elysium once again. The scene fades as you all leave. And I think that's a good point for us to stop. This is about 11 p.m., about 4 hours in, and the next scene I imagine is going to be pretty involved.